Psalm 71 is one of the most powerful passages in the Bible when it comes to seeking divine protection, deliverance from adversity, and victory over enemies. This psalm was written as a sincere cry to God, reflecting genuine human emotions in the face of difficulties and threats. Unlike some religious texts that may seem distant or abstract, Psalm 71 speaks directly to the heart of anyone facing struggles, persecution, and seemingly impossible challenges. When we read this psalm, we are not just reading ancient words. We are accessing a profound conversation between a person in distress and their God. It is a dialogue that transcends centuries and cultures, remaining completely relevant to anyone facing adversities today. The beauty of Psalm 71 lies in its emotional honesty combined with an unshakable faith in God. Before exploring the specific details of Psalm 71, it is important to understand its context. This psalm was most likely written by someone who was facing persecution, slander, and real threats. The psalmist was not merely having a bad day or dealing with a passing worry. He was in a state of true anguish, seeking urgent help. What makes Psalm 71 so powerful is the way it perfectly balances recognizing the reality of hardships while maintaining absolute trust in God. The psalmist does not deny that enemies exist or that threats are real. Instead, he places these realities within a greater context. God's faithfulness, power, and mercy are far greater than any enemy or adversity. When we begin to study Psalm 71, we learn several fundamental principles about how God protects us. First, the psalmist understands that God's protection is not based on personal merit, but on divine grace and goodness. He does not say, "God, protect me because I am good," or because I deserve it. Instead, he appeals to God's compassionate and generous nature. This is a crucial principle we all need to understand. Often, we worry that we are not worthy of divine protection because of our faults and sins. But Psalm 71 teaches us that God's protection does not work that way. It flows from his benevolent nature, not from our merit. Another key principle is the concept of refuge. The psalmist speaks of finding refuge in God as one who hides in a fortress or a secure rock. Imagine yourself caught in a terrible storm, searching for shelter. God is that perfect shelter. He is the unshakable rock, the impenetrable fortress, the safe haven where enemies cannot reach us. That is the promise of Psalm 71. Psalm 71 does not minimize the reality of enemies. The psalmist is specific about the threats he faces. His adversaries pursue him, speak against him, plot evil, and seek his destruction. He mentions that his enemies say, "God has abandoned him," and "now is the time to strike." This description is incredibly relevant for people today. Our enemies may not be warriors with swords, but we may have adversaries in the form of envious people, unfair competitors, critics who try to bring us down, or circumstances that seem to conspire against us. We may face illness, financial crises, broken relationships, or loneliness. Psalm 71 acknowledges that these battles are real. But here is the crucial point. The psalmist does not focus on strengthening himself to defeat his enemies. Instead, he redirects his trust toward God. He recognizes that the power to overcome does not come from himself, but from God. This shift in perspective is transformative. One of the most inspiring aspects of Psalm 71 is the psalmist's unshakable trust in God despite the negative circumstances around him. He declares, "In you, O Lord, I put my trust," and repeats this theme several times. This is not a blind or naive trust. It is trust based on a history of relationship with God. The psalmist reminds God of his past deeds. He mentions how God sustained him from birth, protected him throughout his life, and was his refuge in times of trouble. This is a powerful spiritual strategy. When we face new difficulties, it helps to remember how God has helped us before. How often do we go through a crisis and completely forget that God has helped us in previous ones? Psalm 71 teaches us to keep those memories alive. When you remember how God has intervened before, your faith is strengthened, and you can trust that He will act again. Psalm 71 not only asks for protection, it goes beyond that and promises complete deliverance. Deliverance means being fully freed from one's enemies, not just being protected from them. It is the difference between being safe at home while danger remains outside and being completely free from danger. The psalmist trusts that God will not only keep him safe, but will completely deliver him from his adversaries. He believes that a time will come when his enemies will no longer threaten him, when he will enjoy lasting peace and security. This is a promise of victory, not just survival. For many people, this promise is transformative. Perhaps you're facing a situation that has been tormenting you for months or even years. Psalm 71 encourages you to believe that this situation will not be permanent. God can and will deliver you completely. A fascinating element of Psalm 71 is that the psalmist not only seeks personal deliverance, he also expresses a desire for his liberation to be witnessed by the world. He wants his enemies to see that God was with him all along. He wants everyone around him to recognize that God's justice is real. This is not mere vanity or a desire for revenge. It is a legitimate longing for truth to be revealed. When you go through a time when people around you believe lies about you, it is powerful when the truth finally comes to light. Psalm 71 assures us that this truth will emerge and that God will be glorified. Notably, Psalm 71 does not end in fear or despair. It ends in praise. The psalmist declares that he will continually praise God for his salvation. He sings about God's righteousness and expresses joy in his expected deliverance. This is deeply significant. Even while still facing threats, the psalmist began to praise God in advance. He did not wait for perfect results to start giving thanks. This is a vital lesson about faith. Sometimes, praise must come before the manifested victory. When we praise God while still in the battle, we are declaring our trust in Him on a much deeper level. How can we apply Psalm 71 in our lives today? First, recognize that you can bring your fears and anxieties honestly before God, just as the psalmist did. You don't have to pretend to be okay when you're not. God invites you to be genuine in your prayer. Second, identify your enemies, whatever they may be, but then redirect your trust toward God instead of focusing on them. Yes, they may seem threatening, but God is infinitely more powerful. Third, recall God's acts in your past. List the times He has helped, guided, and protected you. Let those memories strengthen your faith today. Fourth, begin to praise in advance for the victory. This is not mere positive thinking in a secular sense. It is a declaration of trust in God before seeing the fully manifested results. Something remarkable about Psalm 71 is that the psalmist often speaks of trusting in God since my youth. He has a perspective that goes beyond the present moment. He views his entire life in relation to God, from birth to death, and implicitly beyond. This gives us a broader perspective. The enemies and adversities of the present are not the entirety of our lives. They are only chapters in a much greater story. When you see life this way, your current problems take on a different perspective. They still matter and must be faced, but they do not define your whole life. Psalm 71 is a powerful testament to the truth that God is a protector, deliverer, and just judge. For anyone facing adversity, persecution, or threats, this psalm offers genuine hope and real encouragement. It is not a vague or illusory hope, but a confidence grounded in the nature of God and His demonstrated acts throughout history. When you study and meditate on Psalm 71, you will discover that it not only answers your questions about protection and deliverance, but also profoundly transforms your understanding of who God is. You will see a God who is trustworthy, infinitely powerful, completely just, and immensely compassionate. The promise of Psalm 71 is that your situation is not final. Your deliverance is certain. Your enemies will not have the last word. God will. And when that happens, you will lift a song of praise that echoes through eternity. Trust in God. Your victory is coming.